Alright, hey guys, Pax here. In this video, we're going to be going over the top 5 worst trainer cards in Pokemon Pocket. If you guys are new to my channel, really do consider, if you like and subscribe, really does help me out tremendously, especially as a small-time content creator. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. So before we get into the top 5, I just want to quickly mention a disclaimer. This list will only include non-promo trainer cards. So trainer cards that you can purchase from the shop, such as Handscope, Pokédex, and even Professor's Research. He's far from this list, if anything. Diving into number 5, we have Blue. Came out in Mythical Islands, so a rather old, almost a year old card at this point. And this card was essentially kind of like a counter to Giovanni, essentially negating Giovanni's damage. All of your Pokemon take negative 10 damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. One key takeaway already is that it applies to all your Pokemon, even your bench. So if your opponent tries to chip with Greninja, only doing 10 damage. But another thing to note is that it only applies to attacks. In other words, Greninja, non-EX Greninja, if your opponent uses its ability, it will still do 20 damage to whatever Pokemon it targets. And this card was essentially dead on arrival. I mean, it was kind of rad, like people tried to make it work, but eventually it did get phased out, and power creep really does hit hard because this card is a defensive card, and there are much better defensive cards that help with sustainability. There's PC Lady, Potion, Lily, Giant Cape, and you can even argue Big Malasada, an item card that gets a lot more value than Blue in my opinion. And with that being said, sure, I mean, this kind of hard counters Giovanni while also halving Red's damage. Sure, you could argue that. You get more value with PC Lady, Potion, Lily, healing a lot more than just 10 HP. And on top of that, recently we got kind of like a rise for supporter Pokemon. So Pokemon such as NDDX and even Melodic, healing your active Pokemon as well as being able to attack. And you may argue that this card isn't really meant to heal, more so to make it so that your opponent doesn't knock out your active Pokemon your next turn. Sure, but there are much better negation cards in the game. So I mean, just looking at the metal archetype, making the whole color archetype kind of like negation themed. And with that being said, for metal, we have cards such as Adaman, negates 20 damage for metal. So already doing much better work than Blue. And on top of that, we also have we've gotten Steel Apron. Does the exact same thing as Blue, removing status conditions as well as lasting for multiple turns. So Blue only lasts for one turn, and in that one turn, I mean, your opponent, you got to play it very cautiously because you're only really playing Blue if your opponent's Pokemon, active Pokemon, can knock out your active Pokemon. Under any other circumstance, it won't really make much of a difference. And on top of that, aside from Metal, we have Heavy Helmet. This right here, as you can see, negates 20 damage, however, only applies for Pokemon to have a retreat cost of 3 or higher. And I mean, yeah, you could argue that Blue synergizes better with Pokemon that don't meet that 3 retreat cost requirement. But again, Lily exists, a lot better sustainability cards. And overall, I feel like you just won't get much value with Blue. I feel like this is the definition of meh. Like, you could make him work, but I mean, there are much better cards that synergize well with Pokemon. And it's kind of sad if you're a Blue enjoyer, because I mean, Red, even to this day, is still very meta relevant. Still see some dominance in battles, can definitely be your win condition. And unfortunately, he is in number 5. In number 4, we have Prank Spinner. Came out rather recently. From the time I am uploading this video, came out in Mega Rising, so yeah, rather recently. A card among both players' hands is chosen at random, revealed to the other player, and shuffled into its owner's deck. So in other words, it could also harm you, it could benefit you, and also harm you as well. Let's say you do play this card towards your early game. Next turn, you can get out, let's say, like Mega Blaziken. You can get that card out. You have Rare Candy in your hand. You're set, you're happy. Your opponent doesn't have a Chingling that could disrupt you. You use Prank Spinner just like, you know what? Just want to mess up my opponent. Why not? Just a bit of RNG. And guess what? Your Rare Candy gets chosen. And yeah, just like that, you just can't evolve into Blaziken. This card could be your lost condition in a sense. Yeah, very much a lost condition. I should make a video like top 5 best lose condition cards. I think that would be a pretty fun video to make, but yeah, given this, I feel like you might get more value with this card playing it towards the late game rather than early game. You ideally want to be just built already once you use this card in order so that it doesn't kind of mess you up. And with that being said, you could pair this card with Mars. So let's say late game, your opponent got 2 points. Use Mars, bringing them down to 1 card. Use Prank Spinner, removing their last card. So yeah, could get some value, but again, towards the late game, if you have Cyrus in your hand, that could be your win condition, and that could be chosen. So yeah, definitely in the top 5 lose condition cards. And on top of that, there aren't really that many Pokemon that synergize well with this trainer card. Like, yeah, unless you add a Pokemon that has its ability, like each time a card is like discarded or shuffled back into your deck, it gets more powerful or something like that, this card will never be meta relevant and will most likely just be forgotten. I mean, this came out recently and I've never seen anyone use Prank Spinner. I feel like the only time you'll use this trainer card is if you like RNG. If you want to make a pure RNG deck for whatever reason, and you're like, you know what, Prank Spinner, bit of RNG, I like spinning the wheel. I'm a huge fan of Joey in the Yu-Gi-Oh anime. You just gotta believe in RNG, just time roulette go, and you just win. Yeah, you have protagonist plot armor, but not really that good of an item trainer card. And yeah, Prank Spinner is number 4. In number 3, we have Hitting Hammer. Came out in the same booster set, Mega Rising. I feel like Mega Rising in general has a lot of hit or misses. Like, there's a lot of broken trainer cards, such as, Copycat, May, even Lucia. And there are a lot of forgettable ones, such as Hitting Hammer. Flip 2 coins. If both of them are heads, discard a random energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. Essentially a worse version of Team Rocket's Grunt. Granted, it is an item card, so you could play like 2 Hitting Hammers in a turn. However, you have a 25% chance to discard the energy using this card. Just keep that in mind. And this game, there's a lot of people who already have issues with Misty and even Team Rocket Grunt, with that 50% chance to like mess up your opponent. And even more, like, you could get more value with Team Rocket's Grunt. If you get like 3 or even 2 heads, you can definitely mess up your opponent with Team Rocket Grunt. But then again, I feel like the community consensus is that coin flip cards such as Misty and Team Rocket Grunt are just way too inconsistent to run, especially in this meta. And Hitting Hammer is a lot more inconsistent than those, so that's already saying something. So again, I feel like, just to add on to what I said in number 4, Prank Spinner, I feel like you're only running this card if you like RNG. If you like to flip coins, if like that's your hobby, if you're like a professional coin flipper, then sure. But even without the coin flip mechanic, this game already requires a ton of RNG. And again, ideally you want to play this card in the early game. I feel like that's when this card will get the most value. But in this current meta, we have Chingling, which essentially disrupts usage of item cards early on in the battle. If your opponent attacks with Chingling, then you can't use Hitting Hammer. And despite that, if Chingling isn't active, this card won't get any value. You could also pair this card with Will to increase your chance of success to 50%. But at that point, you have to ask yourself, what's the point? What's the point of that? You're using Will, Hitting Hammer to increase your odds to 50%. Like, why? Again, you might as well use Team Rocket's Grunt, even Guzzlord. You could pair Will with Guzzlord to get a lot more value. Guzzlord, even nowadays, is still pretty good, in my opinion. And yeah, Hitting Hammer is in the number 3 slot. Heading down to number 2, we have a fan favorite person. We have Looker. Yeah, that's all he does. He just looks, observes. That's essentially what his superpower is. Yeah. So as you can see, your opponent reveals all of the supporter cards in their deck. That's it. So you gain some knowledge, but that's pretty much it, man. And you could argue that knowledge is power, but in this circumstance, not really. Because I feel like at a certain point in the game, you kind of know what your opponent has. Most decks run Cyrus, Mars, Sabrina, and Professor's Research. I feel like only one deck that is kind of a little bit viable doesn't run Professor's Research, and that is the Golurk deck. I did make a deck showcase. It's on my channel if you want to check it out. I'll leave it in the description if I remember. 99% of decks run Professor. Cyrus is a huge win condition card. Most decks run it. Mars, I feel like it really depends on the deck. Some decks don't run it, but again, I feel like you should always kind of assume that your opponent has these cards, because especially in the high tier ranks, anything can happen, and one mistake can definitely just lose you the game. So you have to get into the mentality that like, my opponent can Cyrus me, or Mars, or Sabrina. What can I do to prevent that? I feel like the only people who will be running this card are new players who don't have all the meta cards just yet, but they have Looker. For whatever reason, they have Looker. I don't know why, but yeah, I can very much see them using this just to get the feel for the meta, to see how what trainers are prominent. But even then, I feel like it's not really necessary. There's a lot of videos on YouTube helping people become familiar with the game, and you could just be playing PvP, just casual PvP, and get familiar with that. Like just from my personal experience, that's how I got kind of familiar with the meta in this game and other card games, such as I was really into like Duel Links back in the day, essentially learning from trial and error. And yeah, if you're a new player and you run Looker, I'm not gonna judge you. Yeah, otherwise, this card really serves no real purpose in my opinion. And also keep in mind, this only applies to your opponent's deck. So if your opponent already has like a Sabrina or Mars in their hand, you'll never know. This card is essentially a waste of space in my opinion. And looking at the previous cards in this list, like Hitting Hammer, Prank Spinner, Blue, all of them serve a purpose. I don't think they do it that well, but you can make them run and you could potentially mess up your opponent. However, with Looker really doesn't serve much purpose at all. So yeah, if you're a huge Looker enjoyer, I'm sorry, but He's just a looking, really doesn't do much. Before we get into number 1, I just want to quickly mention some honorable mentions. So the first honorable mention that we will be going over is Pokemon Flute. This card, when it first came out, I feel like it kind of served a purpose. You could run this card with Pidgeot EX. I'm just going to pull it up right here. This is Pidgeot EX. As you can see from Pokeflute's description, put a basic Pokemon from your opponent's discard pile onto their bench, and Pidgeot EX gets more powerful the more your opponent's bench is built. But currently, we have cards such as Suicune and Mega Altaria. So let's say like you do knock out, like you're going up against Mega Altaria, you knock out Chingling, they sub in Mega Altaria EX. Mega Altaria EX is only doing 100 damage. Guess what? You decide to Pokeflute and they do 130. And then looking at Suicune EX, yeah, same thing. I mean, Suicune EX gets more powerful the more both players' benches are built. So if you use Pokeflute, Suicune EX gets more powerful. So currently in this meta, it doesn't really serve much purpose. We shall see later on. I mean, there's a very, very small chance that this card could see some viability, but currently, I mean, you're essentially just helping your opponent if anything. You could make this card somewhat viable if you could one-shot your opponent's Pokemon in their discard pile. So let's say you're going up against a Mega Blaziken EX. You have a Charizard EX in your active doing 150 damage, cannot one-shot Mega Blaziken. However, your opponent has an Entei EX in their discard pile. You could Pokeflute, then Sabrina, and just one-shot Entei EX, getting the win. Yeah, that could happen, but I feel like that's a very kind of like specific circumstance to get into, to the point that you're much better running other trainer cards that synergize much better with your Pokemon. Another honorable mention is Penny. Penny came out in Eevee Grove. Look at a random supporter card that's not Penny from your opponent's deck and shuffle it back into their deck. Use the effect of that card as the effect of this card. You ideally want to use this card towards the early game, but even then, it's really up to RNG, because let's say you use this your first turn and you try to get like Professor's Research using Penny, but you get a Cyrus. Cyrus doesn't do anything, completely useless, and you're essentially just wasting a supporter card. So yeah, overall, very RNG dependent. I feel like there's definitely much better trainer cards. I feel like you're only running Penny if you like RNG. If you're just running a pure RNG deck and you just want to suffer pretty much, use Penny and you might have fun, but at the same time, there's a high chance that you will get nothing. Like if you pull a PC Lady, won't do anything. If you get a Sabrina, could mess up your opponent, yeah, sure. But it's a huge risk in my opinion, and the risk is really not worth it. I feel like this card would be 10 times better if instead of shuffling the supporter card back into your opponent's deck, you just flat out discard it. I feel like that would be 10 times better, because let's say you do pull a Cyrus, you can't use it your first turn. But guess what? It's just out of the game, already getting a ton of value. And yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then I feel like Penny would have been extremely broken. Just in that when it first came out, and even nowadays could see a bit of value. But no, it just goes back into your opponent's deck. They can very much just pull the same supporter card the next turn. And on top of not doing anything, it could also disrupt you. So let's say you have a very goated starting hand. You're like, okay, I can get, let's say, whatever, like Mega Blaziken EX out next turn, just like doing 130 flat out. I can just do that. I'm feeling lucky, might as well use Penny. But little do you know, Penny hates you with a passion. And she's like, you know what? I'm just gonna mess you up. I'm gonna hurt your whole career. And yeah, you use Penny and you get an Iono or a Copycat. Yeah, your whole hand, God hand is gone, and you get a much shittier hand. That can very much happen with Penny. Just keep that in mind. So it's a huge risk to use. All right, heading down to number 1, place your bets on what the card will be. This card is very forgettable. I feel like nobody really remembers this card. Definitely up there with just like, why does it exist? But yeah, number 1 goes to Rotom Dex. Came out in Celestial Guardians. Look at the top card of your deck, then you may shuffle it. So essentially an enhanced version of the promo card Pokédex. But with Pokédex, I feel like you can kind of argue that you can get more value since you can see the top 3 cards. This card, you can just see the top card. So the card you'll draw next turn, and that's essentially it. I mean, you could shuffle your deck, but there's a lot of cards that do that already, such as Pokeball, Iono, Copycat. So that order really doesn't matter, like next turn, potentially, depending on what card you use. And on top of that, let's say you do see your card and you're like, that's a very good card. You need Hydreigon out to win the game. That's like, yeah, you're very much your win condition card. You use Rotom Dex and you see that your next card is Hydreigon. Very excited. You're gonna just do amazing damage next turn. But guess what? Your opponent's next turn, they end up using either red card or Mars, and your deck gets shuffled, essentially making Rotom Dex useless. And aside from that, there are much better trainer card alternatives to Rotom Dex. One card that comes to mind is Hiker. I'm just gonna pull up right here. For each of your fighting Pokemon in play, look at that many cards from the top of your deck and put them back in any order. So if your whole board is built, you're looking at 4 cards, and the top card isn't that good, you could rearrange it so that your top card will be your 4th card pulled, and then by then you could use Pokeball or something else like Copycat to shuffle your deck if your cards aren't really that good. And overall, Rotom Dex, yeah, very forgettable. I mean, when it comes to this mainline Pokemon lore, kind of revolutionary. Essentially the iPhone equivalent in the Pokemon world, but in the Pokemon TCG Pocket world, this doesn't even exist. It's the BlackBerry. Yeah, let's just say that. Like, it's like the pseudo smartphones that really aren't that smart. And yeah, Rotom Dex is number 1. And yeah, those are the top 5 worst trainer cards. Let me know what you guys think in the description if you guys agree with me, if you disagree, if you believe that certain trainer cards should be placed in this list. I am aware that there are trainer cards such as Fantina that specifically buffs Drifblim and Mismagius. There are definitely cards like that that are kind of like Pokemon specific buffs. And you could argue that some of those cards deserve to be on this list, but it really depends. I mean, I can very much see them adding a very broken like Drifblim, Mismagius card. But yeah, that's the video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want more. Really does help me out, especially as a small-time content creator. And I want to keep doing this for the foreseeable future. With that being said, I'll see you guys on my next video. Peace.